My mother looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're strong. Your brother needs us more." That was the same excuse they used when they gave him the family mansion, the business, even my share of my grandfather's inheritance. For 15 years, I paid their medical bills, cleared their debts, and kept the family company alive. Then one rainy afternoon, I found a document that changed everything. Someone had forged my signature. They didn't just steal my inheritance. They erased me from my own family. They thought I'd cry and walk away. Instead, I made sure they lost everything. I used to believe family meant sacrifice. Growing up, my parents repeated the same sentence so often that it became part of who I was. We're a team. Whenever money was tight, I worked extra hours. Whenever my younger brother, Ethan, got into trouble, I fixed it. Whenever Mom cried about unpaid bills, I transferred money without asking questions. I wasn't rich. I was simply the responsible daughter. By 29, I had built a successful accounting firm from nothing. 70-hour workweeks. Missed birthdays. Cancelled vacations. Every promotion came with another sacrifice. But every paycheck had one destination before it reached my savings account. My parents. Dad's heart medication. Mom's medical insurance. Their mortgage. Their electricity. Even Ethan's credit card debt. No one forced me. I did it because they were my family. Every Christmas, Mom hugged me and whispered, "We don't know what we'd do without you." Dad always smiled proudly. "You're the glue that keeps this family together." Meanwhile, Ethan lived like life was one endless vacation. New sports car. Luxury apartment. Weekend trips to Las Vegas. Designer watches. He changed jobs every few months because every boss was supposedly jealous of his talent. Whenever he ran out of money, Mom would call me. "Honey, your brother is struggling again." And Samaho. I always became the solution. One Friday evening, I stopped by my parents' house carrying groceries and Dad's prescriptions. The living room was filled with laughter. There were balloons. Champagne bottles. A giant red ribbon hung from a stack of house keys. I froze. Ethan stood in the middle of the room grinning. Mom rushed toward me. "Oh good, you're here." She hugged me tightly. Then she pointed proudly at Ethan. "We bought your brother his first house." Everyone clapped. I looked at the keys. Then at Dad. Then back at Mom. "You bought him a house?" Dad smiled. "He deserves a fresh start." My chest tightened. "A house?" Mom nodded happily. "A beautiful 4-bedroom place." I couldn't even process what I was hearing. Just last week, Mom had called crying because they couldn't afford property taxes. I had wired them $10,000. Now, they had somehow purchased Ethan a house. I asked quietly, "Where did the money come from?" The room became strangely silent. Dad avoided my eyes. Mom cleared her throat. "We used part of Grandpa's inheritance." My stomach dropped. Grandpa had left money for both of us. Equal shares. Or so I believed. I forced a smile. "What about my share?" Mom laughed nervously. "Oh sweetheart. You don't need it." I blinked. "What?" She walked closer and squeezed my shoulder. "You're successful. You have your own company. You'll make more money." Then she smiled at Ethan. "But your brother needs it more." The room erupted in laughter again. Everyone acted like those 5 words explained everything. He needs it more. I looked around the room. No one seemed uncomfortable. No one questioned it. It was as if my years of sacrifice had simply disappeared. I quietly placed Dad's medication on the kitchen counter. Then I left without saying goodbye. That night, for the first time in my life, I didn't answer when Mom called. Or Dad. Or Ethan. 23 missed calls. 9 voicemails. I ignored every single one. Because for the first time, I wasn't angry. I was curious. How exactly had Grandpa's inheritance suddenly become Ethan's inheritance? And why? Did something about their explanation feel like a lie? I had no idea. That one simple question was about to destroy my entire family. I barely slept that night. Mom's words echoed in my head. You don't need it. He needs it more. The sentence wasn't what hurt. It was how casually she had said it. As if my grandfather had spent his entire life working to build a legacy, only for someone else to decide I wasn't worthy of it. The next morning, I drove to my grandfather's lawyer's office. Mr. Harrison had known my family for over 30 years. When his secretary saw me, she smiled warmly. Emily, it's been a long time. I need to see Mr. Harrison. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from the elderly attorney. He looked genuine. Surprised. What brings you here? I took a deep breath. I want a copy of my grandfather's will. His smile disappeared. Your mother never gave you one? No. He frowned. That's strange. He opened an old filing cabinet and searched through several folders. Finally, he pulled out a thick file. This is everything. He adjusted his glasses. As your grandfather instructed. My heart pounded. He slid the document across the desk. I immediately flipped to the page showing the inheritance. Then, my entire body froze. The document stated 100% of the estate transferred to Ethan. Nothing for me. Not even $1. No. I whispered. That can't be right. Mr. Harrison looked confused. Why? My grandfather promised us equal shares. The lawyer slowly removed his glasses. He never told me that. I stared at the paper again. Then something caught my attention. At the bottom of the final page, there was my signature. Except, it wasn't mine. At first glance it looked identical. But then I noticed it. The loop in the letter E. The way the final stroke curved upward. Whoever copied my signature had done an excellent job. Just not perfect enough. I looked up. I didn't sign this. The lawyer blinked. What? I have never seen this document. Silence filled the room. He leaned forward. Emily. Are you accusing someone of forgery? I don't know yet. But that's not my signature. Mr. Harrison immediately locked the file inside his desk. If what you're saying is true, this is a criminal matter. My hands began shaking. Questions raced through my mind. Who forged it? Why? And who benefited the most? The answer came almost instantly. My brother. But Ethan wasn't smart enough to pull off something like this alone. Which meant someone had helped him. Someone inside the family. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. I strongly recommend you hire a forensic handwriting expert before making accusations. I nodded. I will. As I stood to leave, he stopped me. Emily. I turned around. Your grandfather came here 2 weeks before he passed away. He made me promise something. What promise? The old lawyer looked me straight in the eyes. He said, if anything ever happens to my granddaughter's inheritance, tell her to look inside the old grandfather clock in my study. A chill ran down my spine. The grandfather clock? Mr. Harrison nodded. He insisted those exact words be written in my notes. My grandfather's study. No one had entered it since his funeral. Mom had said it was too painful. Now I wondered. Was it really about grief? Or were they hiding something? That evening, I drove to my parents' house. The lights were off. Perfect. I still had the spare key Dad had given me years ago. The house was silent. Every room looked exactly the same. Except one. Grandpa's study. The door was locked. My heart began pounding. Why would anyone lock a room that hadn't been used in years? I grabbed a small screwdriver from Dad's toolbox in the garage. 30 seconds later, the old lock clicked open. The room smelled of dust and old books. Moonlight spilled through the window. In the corner stood the enormous grandfather clock. Just as Grandpa had left it. I slowly opened the wooden panel. At first, nothing. Then my fingers brushed against a small velvet pouch taped inside the clock. I pulled it out. Inside was a silver key. And a folded handwritten note. Across the front, in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 chilling words. If you're reading this, they betrayed you. I felt my breath catch. Whatever was inside that envelope was about to expose the truth my family had spent years hiding. My hands trembled as I unfolded the note. The paper was old. The edges were yellow. But my grandfather's handwriting was unmistakable. Emily. If you're reading this, then I was right. Someone in this family betrayed you. I knew they would try to change my wishes after I was gone. That's why I left the real evidence somewhere they would never think to look. The silver key opens my safety deposit box at First National Bank. Inside is everything you'll need. Don't trust anyone. Not even your parents. Grandpa. I read the last line 3 times. Not even your parents. My grandfather had seen this coming. Years before his death. A loud noise snapped me back to reality. A car door slammed outside. My parents. They were home. I shoved the letter and silver key into my purse just as I heard the front door open. Mom laughed from downstairs. I can't believe Ethan finally owns that house. Dad chuckled. Best decision we ever made. I quietly switched off the study light and slipped behind the heavy curtains. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Closer. Closer. The study door creaked open. Dad walked in. For a terrifying second, I thought he had seen me. Instead, he walked straight to the grandfather clock. He opened the same hidden panel I'd just searched. His face turned pale. It's gone. He whispered. Mom rushed inside. What do you mean it's gone? The envelope. The key. They're both gone. A cold silence filled the room. Mom's breathing became heavy. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Emily. Dad looked at her. You think she knows? She has to. Dad cursed under his breath. We should have destroyed that clock years ago. Mom folded her arms. I told you we couldn't risk leaving the original documents anywhere. Original documents? My heart pounded so hard I thought they would hear it. Dad lowered his voice. If she gets into that safety deposit box, we lose everything. Mom answered without hesitation. Then she can't get there first. For the first time in my life, I heard fear in my mother's voice. Not guilt. Fear. I carefully slipped out of the study while they argued. Every step felt louder than the last. The old staircase groaned beneath my feet. I froze. Silence. Then. Did you hear that? Mom asked. My pulse exploded. Dad stepped into the hallway. I was only a few feet from the back door. One more step. Another. The floorboard creaked. There. Dad shouted. I didn't wait. I sprinted through the kitchen, threw open the back door, and ran into the pouring rain. Emily. Mom screamed behind me. Stop. I kept running. By the time I reached my car, Dad was already chasing me across the yard. He pounded on my driver's window. Emily. Listen to me. I locked the doors. His expression changed instantly. The kind, loving father I had known my entire life was gone. In his place stood a desperate man. A man with something to hide. He leaned close to the glass. His voice was low. If you open that safety deposit box, you'll regret it. I stared at him for a second. Then started the engine. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. My parents weren't trying to stop me anymore. They were standing together in the rain, watching me leave. Neither of them looked heartbroken. They looked terrified. And for the first time, I realized something that changed everything. This wasn't just about an inheritance. It was about a secret. Big enough to destroy my entire family. The next morning, I parked across the street from First National Bank. I hadn't slept for even an hour. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Dad's warning. If you open that safety deposit box, you'll regret it. That wasn't the voice of a loving father. That was the voice of a man protecting a secret. I tightened my grip on Grandpa's silver key and walked inside. The bank manager, Mrs. Collins, greeted me politely. How can I help you today? I placed the key on her desk. My grandfather, Richard Lawson, left me access to his safety deposit box. She typed his name into her computer. A few seconds later, her eyebrows lifted. One moment, please. She disappeared into a back office. When she returned, she wasn't alone. The branch manager followed behind her carrying a thick folder. Ms. Lawson? Yes. According to your grandfather's written instructions. This box can only be opened in your presence. My heart skipped. So, no one else has opened it? He shook his head. No one. Relief washed over me. Whatever Grandpa had hidden, it was still there. A few minutes later, we entered the secure vault. Rows of steel boxes lined the walls. The manager unlocked one lock. I inserted Grandpa's silver key into the second. Click. The drawer slid open. Inside, there wasn't money. There weren't jewels. There were only three things. A sealed envelope, a flash drive, and a leather-bound journal. I picked up the envelope first. Written across the front were 7 words. Open this before anything else. I broke the seal. Inside was another handwritten letter. Emily. If you're reading this, then my fears became reality. Your parents never knew about this box. Neither did Ethan. Because I stopped trusting them long before I died. 6 months before my death, I hired a private investigator. He discovered something that broke my heart. Someone had been stealing money from my accounts. At first, I thought it was an employee. I was wrong. It was your father. But he wasn't acting alone. Your mother knew everything. Together, they transferred millions into fake companies. Companies controlled by Ethan. When I confronted them, they begged for forgiveness. I pretended to believe them. Instead, I rewrote my will. Everything I owned was left to you. The will your parents showed everyone is a forgery. The original is stored on the flash drive, along with video recordings. Don't let them destroy the truth. Love. Grandpa. I couldn't breathe. My parents hadn't simply favored Ethan. they had stolen from Grandpa while he was alive. Then forged legal documents after his death. Tears filled my eyes. Not because of the money. Because my grandfather had died believing his own son had betrayed him. I wiped my face and picked up the flash drive. The bank manager quietly handed me a laptop. "You may use this here if you wish." I inserted the drive. One folder appeared. Final evidence. Inside were dozens of files. Bank statements. Emails. Property transfers. Hidden accounts. Then. One video. Its title made my stomach twist. "Watch this first." I clicked play. The screen flickered. Grandpa appeared. He looked weak. Older. But his voice was calm. "If you're watching this, Emily, then they ignored my final wishes." He smiled sadly. "I know you're wondering why I didn't expose them myself." He looked down for a moment. "Because I wanted to believe my son would do the right thing." His eyes filled with tears. Instead, he chose greed. Then Grandpa leaned closer to the camera. "There's one more truth you don't know." My pulse raced. He took a long breath. "The reason your parents always chose Ethan is because Ethan isn't actually my grandson." Everything inside me stopped. "What?" Grandpa continued. "Years ago, your mother had an affair. Your father discovered it, but chose to raise Ethan as his own. Only 4 people ever knew the truth. Your mother, your father, me, and the man Ethan believes is a family friend." I stared at the screen in complete shock. Every memory, every sacrifice, every excuse, every time they had chosen Ethan over me, suddenly made sense. But Grandpa wasn't finished. He looked directly into the camera one last time. "The DNA report proving everything is hidden inside the back cover of my journal." The video ended. Silence filled the vault. With shaking hands, I picked up the leather journal. Slowly, I opened the back cover. Something thin was taped inside. A sealed laboratory envelope. Across the front were 4 chilling words. "Confidential DNA results." And in that moment, I realized my family's biggest lie wasn't about the inheritance. It was about who Ethan really was. I stared at the sealed DNA envelope for nearly a minute. My hands refused to move. If I opened it, there would be no going back. Slowly, I broke the seal. Inside was a certified laboratory report. I skipped straight to the conclusion. Probability of paternity, 0%. My father wasn't Ethan's biological father. I leaned back in the chair, trying to process everything. The inheritance. The forged will. The stolen money. And now this. For 30 years, my parents had built our family on lies. But one question still haunted me. Why had Grandpa waited until after his death to reveal the truth? As I closed the journal, something slipped from between the pages. A small business card. On the back, Grandpa had written just one sentence. "Trust Detective Mason Reed." An hour later, I was sitting across from Mason Reed in a quiet office downtown. He was in his 60s, with sharp gray eyes that missed nothing. The moment I placed Grandpa's journal on his desk, he recognized it. "So," he sighed. "He finally told you. You knew?" "I've known for 7 years." He opened a locked drawer and removed another thick folder. "I've been waiting for this day." He slid the file toward me. The cover read, "Lawson Family Investigation." Inside were hundreds of pages. Photographs. Financial records. Bank transfers. Copies of emails. Every illegal transaction my parents had made. Then I found something unexpected. Security camera photos. One showed my father entering Grandpa's lawyer's office late at night. Another showed Ethan carrying boxes out of Grandpa's home just 2 days after the funeral. They destroyed evidence, Mason said quietly. But not all of it. He reached into the folder again. This is the piece they've been searching for. He handed me a small black USB drive. What's on it? The security footage. From where? He looked me straight in the eyes. Your grandfather's study. I froze. They were recorded? Mason nodded. Hidden cameras. They never knew. My heartbeat quickened. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. The first video began. It was dated 2 days after Grandpa's funeral. The study appeared empty. Then the door opened. My father walked in. My mother followed. Ethan came last. Dad locked the door. Mom placed Grandpa's original will on the desk. I couldn't breathe. Dad pulled another document from his briefcase. The forged will. Then, right in front of the camera, they swapped the documents. Ethan nervously asked, "Are you sure nobody will find out?" Dad laughed. "Emil. Why trusts us too much?" Mom smiled. She's always been the obedient one. Then Ethan asked the question that shattered what little hope I had left. What if she fights back? Mom shrugged. She won't. She loves us. And if she does? Dad smirked. We'll make everyone think she's after the money. The three of them laughed together. I slammed the laptop shut. Tears blurred my vision. Not because they had stolen my inheritance. Because they had planned every word. Every hug. Every, "we love you." Every thank you. Every tear. It had all been part of keeping me obedient. Mason let the silence settle. Finally, he spoke. You have enough evidence to send all three of them to prison. I looked at him. No. He frowned. No? I don't want them arrested. Why not? I slowly wiped away my tears. Because prison is too easy. Mason studied my face. Then, for the first time, he smiled. What are you thinking? I leaned forward. They stole everything from me. I paused. So I'm going to take everything from them. 3 days later, my parents invited the entire family to Ethan's extravagant housewarming party. Politicians, business partners, family friends. Everyone would be there. They wanted to celebrate the success of their favorite son. They had no idea. I had already accepted the invitation. Not to celebrate, but to destroy the empire of lies they had spent decades building. And before the night was over, the people who had stolen my future would be begging for mercy in front of everyone they had ever tried to impress. By 6 o'clock that evening, Ethan's new mansion looked like something out of a luxury magazine. Luxury cars filled the driveway. A live jazz band played beside the pool. Crystal chandeliers glowed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Every important person in town seemed to be there. Bank executives, judges, business owners, local reporters. Everyone believed they were attending the celebration of the Lawson family's success. No one knew. They were about to witness its destruction. I stepped out of my car wearing a simple black dress. No expensive jewelry. No designer handbag. Just confidence. The moment I walked through the front door, the room fell silent. Mom spotted me first. A fake smile spread across her face. There she is. She hurried over and hugged me as if nothing had happened. You finally came. I smiled politely. I wouldn't miss Ethan's big night. Dad relaxed. For a moment, They actually believed I had forgiven them. Ethan walked over holding a glass of champagne. Glad you decided not to make things ugly. I looked him in the eye. Oh. I won't. His smile grew wider. He had no idea. An hour later, Dad climbed onto the small stage in the ballroom. He tapped his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank everyone for celebrating my son's incredible achievement. AP. Applause filled the room. Mom stood proudly beside Ethan. Photographers snapped picture after picture. Dad raised his glass. Tonight is proof that hard work always pays off. That was my cue. I stood. Excuse me. Every head turned toward me. I'd like to say a few words too. Dad hesitated. Then forced a smile. Of course. He handed me the microphone. Big mistake. I looked around the room. So many wonderful people. Friends. Business partners. Family. I smiled. I think everyone deserves to know how Ethan was able to afford this beautiful house. The room became quiet. Mom's smile disappeared. Dad slowly stepped toward me. Emily. This isn't the time. I ignored him. I brought a little slideshow. At the back of the room, Detective Mason Reed gave me a slight nod. The projector came to life. The first image appeared. A copy of Grandpa's real will. People leaned forward. Whispers spread across the room. Dad's face lost all color. What is this? He demanded. I answered calmly. The will my grandfather actually signed. The second image appeared. The forged version. Placed side by side. Every difference highlighted. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. One of Dad's business partners stood up. Those signatures don't even match. I clicked to the next slide. The security footage began playing. The room watched in stunned silence as my parents and Ethan entered Grandpa's study. Removed the original will. And replaced it with the fake one. No narration was needed. The video spoke for itself. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. Turn it off. Dad rushed toward the projector. Before he could reach it, 2 uniformed police officers stepped into his path. He froze. The room erupted into shocked whispers. Someone near the front muttered, "Oh my God." A reporter quietly lifted his phone and started recording. Then came the final video. Grandpa appeared on the screen. His voice echoed through the silent ballroom. If you're seeing this, it means the people I trusted most betrayed me. The room was completely still. Grandpa continued. My granddaughter, Emily, is the rightful heir to everything I built. Anyone claiming otherwise is lying. Dad lowered his head. He knew it was over. But I wasn't finished. I took one step toward Ethan. There's one more thing everyone should know. His confident smile vanished. I held up the sealed DNA report. You've spent your entire life believing you were Grandpa's grandson. Ethan frowned. What are you talking about? Mom screamed. Emily, don't. I looked at her. For 30 years. You lied to both of your children. The room held its breath. I slowly opened the report. Then read the conclusion aloud. Probability of paternity, 0%. Silence. Complete silence. Ethan stared at the paper. Then at Dad. Then at Mom. His voice barely came out. Mom? She couldn't answer. She simply burst into tears. Ethan turned to Dad. Tell me she's lying. Dad's eyes filled with shame. But he couldn't. Because, for the first time in 30 years, the truth needed no explanation. It had finally spoken for itself. The ballroom was silent. No music. No laughter. No applause. Only the sound of Ethan's shaky breathing. He looked at my father with tears in his eyes. Is it true? Dad closed his eyes. For 30 years, he had defended every lie. But now, there was nowhere left to hide. Yes. The single word echoed through the room. Ethan staggered backward as if someone had punched him. He looked at Mom. You knew? She couldn't even lift her head. I was trying to protect this family. Ethan laughed bitterly. Protect us? You destroyed us. He threw his champagne glass onto the marble floor. It shattered into hundreds of pieces. You let me hate Emily. You let me believe I deserved everything. And all this time, you were lying to me too. For the first time in his life, Ethan realized he had also been a victim. Not of me, but of the two people he trusted most. Just then, the ballroom doors opened. 3 investigators from the Financial Crimes Division walked inside. Behind them came officers carrying sealed evidence boxes. The lead investigator spoke calmly. Mr. Lawson. We have warrants to seize all assets connected to the fraud investigation. Dad's face turned white. What? The businesses. The properties. The bank accounts. They've all been frozen. Gasps spread across the room. Business partners immediately stepped away from my parents. Phones began ringing. One investor whispered, "Cancel every deal with the Lawsons." Another quietly told his assistant, "Pull our funding immediately." Within minutes, the empire my parents had spent 30 years building collapsed before their eyes. Mom suddenly rushed toward me. She grabbed my hands. Tears streamed down her face. "Emily, please. I know we made mistakes." Mistakes? I gently pulled my hands away. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose Ethan. You chose greed. And every single day, you chose to lie. She fell to her knees. Please forgive us. I looked down at the woman who had raised me. For years, I had dreamed about this moment. I imagined screaming, crying, making her feel exactly what I had felt. Instead, I felt nothing. No anger. No hatred. Just peace. Because revenge wasn't watching them suffer. Revenge was surviving without them. I turned toward the crowd. My grandfather spent his life building a company based on honesty. I intend to rebuild it. I'll keep every employee. I'll honor every honest contract. But the Lawson name. I looked once more at my parents. Will never again stand for lies. The room erupted into applause. Not for revenge, but for justice. 6 months L. A tear. The company was thriving again. Employees who had feared losing their jobs were smiling. Investors had returned. Grandpa's scholarship foundation was reopened. His dream finally lived on. One afternoon, I visited Grandpa's grave. Fresh flowers covered the stone. I smiled softly. We did it, Grandpa. A familiar voice came from behind me. I guess you did. I turned. It was Ethan. He looked completely different. No expensive suit. No luxury watch. Just jeans and a simple shirt. I sold the house, he said quietly. I donated most of the money. I've started over. I nodded. I'm glad. He looked down. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I extended my hand. We can't change the past, but we can decide who we become. He shook my hand. And walked away. Not as my enemy. Not as my brother. Just another person trying to rebuild a broken life. 3 weeks later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was Grandpa's old pocket watch. Hidden beneath the velvet lining was one final handwritten note. The greatest revenge is not taking everything from those who betrayed you. It's proving you never needed them to win. I closed the watch and smiled. For years, I thought my parents had stolen my future. The truth was, they had only delayed it. Because in trying to erase me, they had unknowingly created the strongest version of me.